to protect the American people from these very threats. The United States government has the capacity to do it. It's just going to take leaders that are prepared.
Mike Pompeo. Secretary, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. I want to get your reaction to Edward Lawrence's report and really overall assess for us Joe Biden on the world stage with Xi Jinping overnight.
Well, good morning, Maria. Thanks for having me on this morning. Tree planting. I joke about that only because the primary mission set appears to have been taking American money and providing it to other countries to support the Biden agenda's climate change plan. I listened to his press conference yesterday after his meeting with Xi Jinping. It doesn't matter what I think, but I think Xi Jinping would have seen that as weakness. Right? I can't tell you what our Taiwan policy. Yesterday he said he reiterated our one China policy. That's not what he has said for the previous 6 months. He talked about the fact that he doesn't want a new Cold War with the Chinese Communist Party. Maria, you and I know the Chinese Communist Party has been at war with the United States as an economic matter for at least the last 25 years. And he talked about competition and places they could cooperate. I think Xi Jinping will sense this as weakness, and much as Vladimir Putin saw Biden as weak and advanced in Europe, I'm afraid Xi Jinping will continue to advance around the world as a result of this meeting.
Well, it's very discouraging, Secretary, particularly since we have outlined all of the ways the Biden family is compromised after having taken tens of millions of dollars from Chinese officials tied to the CCP, as per Senator Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley's reporting and investigating. But now we understand that there are CCP police stations all across the world, and there is a police station that the CCP runs in New York. I'm just baffled by this. How does the federal government allow a CCP police station to operate in America when we have our own law enforcement? He's canceled the China initiative, so we're not apparently investigating the intellectual property theft and the surveillance programs that you investigated so well on your watch. You tried to hold the CCP to account for the bad behavior. Why aren't we doing it anymore?
Maria, it's unexplainable and dangerous for the American people. When we think about China, often folks think about Beijing or Taiwan. I think about New York, Houston, LA, Iowa, Kansas, my home state. I think about the things that are inside the gates here. And you're talking about police stations. The Chinese are apparently now running operations inside the United States to surveil dissidents here, almost always American citizens. And they took down a Justice Department program that we had initiated to confront exactly this challenge. When we saw spying, we closed down the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas. We were serious about protecting the American people from the Chinese threat inside the gates. And President Biden doesn't seem remotely interested in taking the actions that the American people must demand to protect them from this real and serious threat inside our own country.
Yeah, and I think the way you say it, inside the gates, is really apropos. It tells us exactly what's going on. What are we going to do? Just allow this inside the gates activity to continue? Already, General Jack Keane was with us earlier in the program, and he said very pointedly that we are outmanned, we are outgunned when it comes to the Navy. We've allowed this over the last several years by not investing in the Navy in the United States, while the Chinese Communist Party has been investing in their military aggressively.
Maria, it's so true. Sadly, you asked, what are we going to do? President Biden was asked, what's he going to do in these next 2 years? And he said, no change. Not going to make any change in what I'm doing. I think he meant that in the domestic sense, but make no mistake about it, this Chinese threat is a domestic threat. He went and met with Xi Jinping and apparently, according to the readouts, did not mention the fentanyl crisis in our communities all across America that's coming from China. He apparently didn't mention the millions of people that the Chinese Communist Party acted in a way that resulted in 10 million deaths around the world and through COVID. This is a sign of weakness. President Biden has given no indication he's prepared to change. I hope the next House and Senate will begin to pass legislation, force President Biden to sign it to protect us all from this very threat that we're speaking about this morning.
Well, it's all extraordinary. And then the U.S. Navy intercepted a fishing vessel headed to Yemen from Iran with enough material on board to fuel more than a dozen medium-range ballistic missiles. The ship was traveling along a route historically used to send weapons to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, Secretary. What should we be thinking about this?
I know that route very well. We interdicted lots of weapons, conventional weapons, in that very route. This administration still wants to negotiate with the very regime that was moving this capability, this set of systems support tools, into what would ultimately be an Iranian-backed force. It is crazy to think that you're going to negotiate with the Ayatollah and President Raisi, the guy who's known as the Butcher of Tehran, and cut a deal with them. We need to demonstrate American resolve. We need to starve the beast and make sure the regime doesn't have the billions of dollars it needs to complete its program. And if we do that, we will unite the Middle East, the Gulf Arab states, Israel, the West, against this threat from Iran, instead of saying, no, I think we can just delay their program for a couple more weeks or a couple more months or maybe a couple more years and hope that Iran will change. And I'll say this, too, for the young women in Iran who are protesting today and the families that can see their lives are being ruined by this very same regime that threatens Israel and the world, the United States could, can, and must do more.
Well, I mean, you're right, and we've been putting a spotlight on what's going on in Iran. We haven't heard a peep from the administration about the murderous regime in Iran. You talk about peace in the Middle East. You did that with the Abraham Accords. We know that you did. And now, you know, we keep hearing Christopher Wray at the FBI tell us how dangerous the CCP is, and yet they don't do anything about it. Joe Biden won't call them an adversary. He keeps calling China a competitor, not an adversary, which we know that they are. And now the New York Times is reporting that authoritarian governments like China and Iran are increasingly hiring private investigators to surveil and track dissidents living in the United States, just like you just reported. As I've been reporting, the Chinese police stations used to monitor residents abroad. There's 54 in 30 different countries, including the one that I mentioned in New York City. We're learning Iran is also spying on its citizens living overseas. Secretary, what can we do about this? I mean, the average person out there doesn't have the knowledge or understanding about why they're doing this, surveilling American citizens, and what they're going to do with this information.
Well, the Chinese Communist Party is surveilling American citizens to collect data on them, their healthcare information, their facial recognition information, all of these tools. They're putting it in big databases that they will ultimately use their AI capabilities. This is an espionage effort inside the United States designed to increase Chinese power. It's pretty straightforward. President Xi's talked about this. Maria, you and I have spoken. He talks about struggle. He wants to be the hegemon, the global power in the world. And this collection of data and intelligence on American citizens is part of that struggle. We can push back. We have many tools. We were close to banning TikTok here in the United States in the Trump administration. Had we had a few more months, I'm convinced we would have gotten there. We need to protect the American people from these very threats. The United States government has the capacity to do it. It's just going to take leaders that are prepared to confront this threat and not naively walk away from it, as I see President Biden doing just about every day.
Yeah, I just wonder what the CCP has on Joe Biden after all that money that he and his family took in. What do they know that he's so afraid of that he walks on eggshells every time he's with Xi Jinping? We'll keep following that. But, Secretary, I want to get your take. Tonight, we're expecting President Trump to make a big announcement. The midterm elections are over, and everybody's wondering who will be the candidates for 2024. With your resume, including what you were able to accomplish regarding China, regarding the Middle East, having been Secretary of State, having been the director of the CIA, not to mention Kansas Congressman, are you ready to announce a White House bid?
Oh, Maria, you forgot fifth grade Sunday school teacher, my most important job in life. Look, we're trying to figure out how next to be a part of a continuing advancement of American interests here at home. We, Susan and me, we're trying to figure our way through it. For the next handful of days, we're going to be working to make sure that Senator Walker becomes Senator Walker. And so I'm going to head down to Georgia and make sure that we win that race. And there'll be plenty of time to sort out what the proper role for me and my family is in the months ahead. We're doing the things one would do to prepare, but we'll have to wait and see what that ultimately brings. We all should watch not only what President Trump says tonight, but what other conservative leaders are saying. We need to look forward, not backward. We don't need celebrity and noise. We need serious leadership, and I'm confident the American people are going to get that from our party.
Well, it sounds like we've got a number of candidates who may come out, like Mike Pence as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's good. Our team's got lots of good voices, many different views. We should lay them out there. We should start doing that just as soon as the beginning of next year and present the case, make the argument. Maria, one of the reasons I think we didn't do as well on Tuesday is we didn't make the case that we were the trusted hands, the serious leaders who had real answers for the American people. That's what I expect the candidates for president will do, who put themselves forward, as well as the candidates for school board, district attorneys races all across America. People are starving for real leadership that is serious.
Yeah.
They're not looking for celebrity. They want answers and outcomes for their families.
Yeah, especially when you've got these gigantic threats like the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating America inside the gates, as you put it so well. Mike Pompeo, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much for being with me this morning.
Thank you, Maria. Great to be with you this morning. Yes, ma'am.
All
So
right.
long.